It's early into May now, and I'm starting to think about what bucks are on the farm that I'm going to be excited about hunting this fall. There's a couple of them that have my attention, but the downside with those deer, they fell off the radar, both of them, fairly early. One of them is this buck that we'd call the Lone Oak buck, and I didn't get any pictures of him or any sightings of him after about the 11th, I believe, of November. The other one is, we haven't named him yet, is a big 6x5 that was pretty regular on the farm through October, and we didn't see him or pick up any pictures of him after about the middle to the latter part of October. So this gets me to thinking about, obviously the reaction is, these deer got killed, or they left, or I'm never going to see these deer again, or whatever. But it gets me to thinking about some of the deer over the years that have disappeared and then shown back up again. Surprised us. And the one that jumps to my mind most now is a deer that we end up nicknaming Daggers. And I killed him in 2011, saw him in 2009. I thought he was a 3-year-old in 2009. I mean, it was borderline between a 2 or a 3-year-old. Really nice looking deer. Was excited about seeing him again. Didn't get any pictures of him or see him at all in 2010. As far as I know, he fell off the radar. No history with that deer during that year. In 2011, he popped back up again in the same area, and he'd grown quite a lot. I mean, he was a very impressive buck. Got a lot of pictures of him. I think I even got some trail cam video of him, and then killed him towards the tail end of October. I was guessing him at that point to be a 5-year-old deer, but after sending the teeth in, I found out that he was only 4. So another really tremendous buck that had great genetics that maybe I killed him a year too soon. But again, that illustrates a key point here, and that is, as we're trying to put together our hit lists every year, we face this situation where we kind of lose confidence in whether or not that deer is still going to be here. But don't lose hope. Some of the bucks that have disappeared are still around. They might have moved their core area just a little bit. You're just not quite in there anymore. Then they shift back again. They don't do this a bunch. Maybe about roughly 30% of the bucks that we've encountered on this farm will move their core area from year to year. Most of them fall back into the same range that they were at the previous fall, but some of them do establish a new fall range. So that's the takeaway for today is, when we're looking at deer behavior, there aren't any absolutes. You're going to get, every deer is unique, especially when they reach a certain age where they start to become individuals. So you got to hunt them all individually. You have to learn their traits, as just a one specific deer, and don't assume too much. If the deer disappeared, he might be around there someplace. Don't lose hope.
Realtree's Midwest Whitetail is brought to you by RTP Outdoors, Redneck Blinds, Hoyman Tree Saws, Ozonics, Nikon, Easton Arrows, America's Best Bowstrings, Viking Solutions, Spot Hog Releases, Cabela's, Hoyt, Frigid Forage, Fuse, Grizzly Coolers, Drake Non-Typical, Wasp Archery, and Realtree Edge. Hunt with an edge.
In this next segment, I want to talk about the best arrows and broadheads for whitetail hunting. And everything that we do gear-wise is debatable. So people have opinions. Some of those opinions are based on experience. Some of them are based on testing. I hope that my opinions here are based on both of those. My own experience in the testing that I've done. Let's start with the arrows. I'm a huge fan of small diameter arrows, and I'm holding the FMJ right here. That's the 5mm diameter size. Easton also makes a 4mm injection, which is even smaller. There are a couple of benefits of the smaller diameter shafts. The most important one to me is the fact that they penetrate better regardless of what you shoot them into. I haven't shot them into anything, any kind of media, whether it's targets, simulated, carcasses. We've done all kinds of testing with this stuff over the years where we've shot them through beef livers, and it's just crazy. Rendered lard, you name it. The smaller the diameter arrow, the better it penetrates. It just has less resistance when it's going through the animal. Obviously, we're gonna come back and have a similar discussion on broadheads, but let's start with the arrow. Small diameter is better. The other advantage of the smaller diameter arrow is it has less surface area, so when the wind is blowing from the side, it doesn't have as much surface area for the wind to push against, so it doesn't drift as far. So you get a little bit better accuracy under a wider range of conditions. Some other testing has shown that the smaller surface area also leads to better retained velocity downrange. So if you're taking longer shots, you're going to carry the speed of the arrow better downrange with a smaller diameter. So those are the upsides to a smaller diameter arrow. I like the FMJ. It's very straight, very durable. So that's my selection within the smaller diameter category. But again, like I said, Easton, I won't say Easton's the only company that makes small diameter arrows, but they're the only ones that have the system where you can just run the tip right square into the arrow without having to use an outsert. So it's just a more streamlined package, just more user-friendly. So now let's talk about, and let's talk real quick about weight. Let's not have this discussion about arrows without talking about the best weight. Again, we're going to get into the area of opinion, and it's going to be debatable, but over the years I've come to the conclusion that speed is more important to a point than what people will give it credit for. And that's really because of the string jumping aspect of the deer that we're shooting at. So, for every 10 or 15 feet per second that we can increase our arrow speed, we reduce the distance that deer can drop correspondingly. It's going to be small, but every inch matters. If you hit just a little bit high of the lungs and the deer gets away, or you hit square in the top of the lungs and you kill the deer, you're going to be happy for those extra 2 or 3 inches that you picked up by shooting a faster arrow. So I like a finished arrow weight that's somewhere in the 5.5 to 6 grains per pound of maximum draw force range. So let's say you're shooting a 60-pound bow. See if I can do this in my head. 5.5 grains times 60 would be 330. I think that's right. 330 grains up to 360 grains would be sort of I won't say it's an upper limit, but that's a nice range for a fast arrow for whitetail hunting. So if you're shooting a smaller diameter and a little bit faster arrow, you get the best of both worlds. You still retain a lot of penetration capability on impact, a little bit faster delivery so that the deer doesn't have the opportunity to drop quite as far during the shot. So keep that in mind. I mean, these are, like I said, all aspects of gear selection that's, you're going to find a lot of different opinions on this. These are mine. So take it for what it's worth. Coming back around to broadheads now, I've always been a firm believer that penetration is more important. Shot placement is most important. Second most important is penetration. And third most important is how much damage you do on impact. So I've always put mechanical broadheads ahead of fixed blade heads, just from the standpoint of accuracy. Again, debatable. If you have a perfectly tuned bow, perfectly tuned arrows, you don't have a lot of flaws in your shooting form, you're probably going to do pretty well with fixed blade broadheads. They may penetrate slightly better than a mechanical head. Mechanical heads on the market are very good now. So I've made that switch several years ago to mechanical broadheads just for the accuracy purposes. So the cutting diameter now is the next trade-off, and you're looking at tissue damage versus penetration. And the larger it opens up, the more resistance it's going to find when it hits the animal. So it's going to have to carry more energy, or literally it's just not going to go in as far. And you'll see that, especially with some of these broadheads that open way up, a 2.5 inch cut. I mean, that does great on soft tissue hits, but when you get into the shoulder, or if you have to shoot down from a steep angle, and you got to go through some of the heavy tissue at the top of the deer in order to penetrate far enough to get into the vitals, you're going to find that these broadheads that open wide are going to limit your penetration too much, and you're not going to get a clean kill. At the very least, you're not going to get an exit hole, which makes blood trailing a lot more difficult too. So I'm a fan of broadheads that are in the 1/4 to 1/2 inch cutting diameter range. you still get a nice trade-off there. You still get enough tissue damage. I mean, we've proven that. How many years have we been bow hunting and killing deer with 1.25" cutting diameter broadheads? It's just been a long, long time. So it's not like we have to have 2.5 inches of cutting diameter in order to kill a deer. You have to hit them in the right place. You got to drive it in deep enough, and then that 1.5 to, or 1.25 to 1.5 inches of cutting diameter is plenty to do the job. So let's talk about specifically the ones I'm going to be shooting this year. Wasp has a couple models that I really like. They've got a Select-A-Cut, and I don't have my reading glasses on. This is the Select-A-Cut model, and it goes anywhere from 1.5 to 1.75 inch cutting diameter. So this one you can adjust it. I like the option of having that 1.5 inch cut. So I'm thinking I'm going to play with that, with the 1.5 inch cut size on the Select-A-Cut on the jackhammer, which is Wasp's 3-blade mechanical. And they also make just a non-adjustable 1.25 inch cutting diameter jackhammer, and that might be the one I fall back on, for my go-to head. But again, I don't want to overstate this, I guess, because you're going to get tired of hearing it, but there's a lot of different opinions on this stuff. And I'm not saying that in every situation I'm right, but I've been doing this for a really long time, and I've studied a lot of this stuff, and I've looked at a lot of research. And for whitetail deer hunting, I'm not talking about Cape buffalo or antelope. I'm talking about the stuff that we do. This is the combination of broadhead size, weight, arrow shaft diameter, arrow weight that sets up best for me. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you right back here again next week for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail. And remember to always dream big.